They discovered Atlantis, a sprawling, vibrant metropolis, yet every artifact recovered confirmed it had never truly been a city at all. The shimmering photographs displayed impossible structures rising from the deep, undeniable proof of a civilization that somehow bypassed the very act of existing. What was brought to light from the crushing azure depths was not a forgotten kingdom, but a chilling paradox that unraveled the past. Aris Thorne, Dr. Aris Thorne actually, spent 30 years chasing shadows. Not just any shadows, but the deep, sun-dappled ones that clung to ancient maps and forgotten texts, hinting at civilization swallowed whole. Her obsession, from the moment she first saw a faded drawing of a colossal, radial city in a crumbling museum exhibit, was Atlantis. Not the New Age crystal city of lore, but a historical Atlantis, a Bronze Age maritime power, a real place that had somehow slipped through the cracks of documented history. She started, like all true seekers of the impossible, in the archives. Libraries that smelled of dust and decaying leather, the cold, insistent hum of microfiche machines, the sharp, almost electric tang of ancient paper. That's where her story really begins, I think, long before the expedition vessels cut through the cerulean waves. She'd spend weeks, months even, poring over pre-Hellenic trade routes, geological surveys of seismic activity in the Mediterranean, linguistic anomalies in obscure island dialects. She was building a case, brick by painstaking brick, for a place no one believed in. Or rather, they believed in the idea of it, but not the reality. She had this theory, always, that the myth was merely a distorted memory, a cultural echo. That the grandeur had been exaggerated, the technology mythologized, but that the core event, the sudden, catastrophic disappearance of an advanced coastal society, was absolutely real. Elena said Aris had more faith in human memory's ability to distort than in any grand conspiracy. Her breakthrough, if you could call it that, didn't come with a flash of insight, but with a dull ache in her lower back from leaning over an antique chart. She found a series of peculiar notations, barely visible, on a 16th-century Venetian merchant's map of the Cyclades. Not symbols, but tiny, almost imperceptible shifts in the coastline, marked by a crosshatch pattern that looked like nothing more than water damage. But it was consistent, across 3 different sections, near an uninhabited volcanic islet no one paid much attention to. Not Atlantis, no. Just a small, insignificant island chain. But the pattern, she realized, mimicked a similar, well-documented geological event that had destroyed a minor Minoan port. An anomaly. Actually, wait. That's not quite right. Elena told me Aris didn't make the connection immediately. She filed it away. She was looking for something grander. The anomaly just sat there, a little pebble in her shoe, until much later. She continued her search for the radial city, for the impossible, until the funding almost dried up. That's when she came back to the pebbles. She secured a small grant, a fraction of what she'd wanted, for a preliminary survey of underdocumented Bronze Age coastal communities. That was the official title. Her private one was simpler, the Pebbles. She assembled a small team, Elena included, a couple of young marine archaeologists, and a geologist who specialized in sudden, catastrophic landmass shifts. Their first target was that particular volcanic islet. It was mostly submerged, a jagged, unremarkable finger of rock poking out of the electric blue waters, home to nothing but sea birds and an occasional fishing boat. The current was fierce, the visibility often poor. It was, in short, a nightmare for divers. This is the strange part, the part that always makes me stop and wonder, because it's so human. Elena said Aris spent the first 2 weeks in a kind of distracted haze. She was still looking past what was there. She was looking for the grand columns, the intricate aqueducts, the signs of a forgotten empire. She didn't see the mundane. She saw the absence of the extraordinary, and it made her irritable. She'd snap at the divers for reporting too much silt, too many common pottery shards. She wanted the gleaming, the impossible. What strikes me at this point is how much of life is like that. We set out with a picture in our heads, a vivid, amber-hued image of what success or meaning should look like, and then when the universe hands us something else, something real, something complex, but not that, we just miss it. We're so busy comparing the actual to the ideal that we don't even see what's truly in front of us. Aris was doing exactly that, almost perfectly. She was so determined to prove the legend true that she was blind to the truth itself, which was far more subtle. She found it, not through some grand sonar sweep, but because a rookie diver, a kid named Leo, reported a peculiar series of indentations on the seabed. Not structural, not architectural, just regular. Too regular for nature. Aris, frustrated, ordered him to focus on the seismic fault lines. But Leo, stubborn in that way only youth can be, came back the next day with sketches. He'd measured them. They were in a grid pattern. Not a grand city grid, but something smaller, more organic. And they were depressions in bedrock, some filled with sand, some with a peculiar, hardened conglomerate of shell and sediment. Aris went down herself. The water was a brilliant azure, clear enough that day to see the subtle undulations of the seabed as if through glass. She traced the lines with her gloved hand. They weren't roads. They weren't building foundations. They were marks. Parallel, consistent, almost rhythmic. She didn't know what they were for a week. The team logged them, mapped them, took core samples. Still, Aris kept trying to fit them into the narrative of a lost metropolis. She almost missed it again. It was Kai, an old man from a nearby fishing village, who actually put the pieces together. He'd been watching their boat for days, a silent, weathered sentinel on the rocky shore. He came out in his small, brightly painted boat one evening, just as the sun was dipping below the horizon, painting the sky in vivid expedition amber. He didn't say much, just offered them a basket of freshly caught fish and sat on the deck, observing the map spread across the table, heavy with the day's findings. Aris, tired and disheartened, waved him towards the peculiar grid pattern. "We can't make sense of these," she sighed, tracing a finger along the drawn lines. "They're not natural, but they're not structures." Kai leaned in, his eyes, the color of ancient jade, scanning the map. He didn't speak English well, but he understood the lines, the depths. He took a gnarled finger and pointed to a series of dots Elena had marked, indicating clusters of the common pottery shards. Then he made a slow, sweeping gesture over the grid, a gesture that encompassed not a city, but something far more intimate. He spoke in his native tongue, a low, guttural murmur. Elena, who had a smattering of the local dialect, translated slowly, haltingly. "He says, these are the marks of where the nets were tied. The fish pens. Where they kept the young ones safe." Aris stared. Net marks. Fish pens. Not a city. A farm. A massive, complex, sophisticated underwater farm. Bronze Age aquaculture. The realization hit her like a physical blow. The legend hadn't been about a city. It had been about a livelihood. About a way of life, sustained by the sea, so fundamental to the community that its destruction had echoed through millennia as the loss of everything. The legend was real, but it wasn't about grandeur, it was about sustenance. It was about the source of their very existence. That's when Aris realized she couldn't unknow what she had found. The mythical, impossible Atlantis she'd chased for so long, had dissolved into something far more tangible, far more human. It was still lost, still a testament to a forgotten Bronze Age ingenuity, but it wasn't the sparkling, advanced civilization of her dreams. It was a farm, a vast, carefully managed system of pens and rearing grounds, designed to feed a population. A whole community, built around this relationship with the sea, swept away by a sudden seismic event, perhaps a tsunami, leaving only the ghost of their nets tethered to the bedrock. She spent the next few months, fueled by a new, almost frantic energy, compiling the evidence. The ceramic fragments, once dismissed as common, now told a story of specialized tools for harvesting and processing. The hardened conglomerate wasn't just sediment, it contained traces of specific algae and fish scales. The geological data, once indicating a landmass subsidence, now suggested a rapid, violent inundation. It all fit. The Bronze Age site, a marvel of sustainable engineering, lost in a single, devastating event. The legend was real, but its core truth was one of human resilience and profound loss, not technological supremacy. Maybe you felt this too. That moment when the thing you've pursued, the grand narrative you've built your life around, turns out to be something entirely different. Not less important, perhaps, but less shiny. More earthy. More real. And you have to adjust your entire internal landscape to fit this new, quieter truth. It's exhausting, Aris told Elena once, the specific exhaustion of being right about something no one with power will act on. Because who wants to fund an expedition to find an ancient fish farm when they can fund the search for a lost supercity? She presented her findings. The initial reaction was polite skepticism, then academic dismissal. The scientific community, she found, was just as invested in the grand narrative of Atlantis as the general public. Fascinating, Dr. Thorne, they'd say, but hardly the Atlantis we've been seeking. The funding dried up completely. No, that's not quite right. Some minor grants for Bronze Age coastal studies came through, enough to write papers, but not enough for continued, large-scale expeditions. The dream of a major, celebrated discovery, of a paradigm shift, withered. The confrontation, the one Elena always spoke of with such quiet reverence, happened back in Kai's village. Aris, defeated, went to thank him. She told him, through Elena's translation, about the academic reception, the polite rejection. Kai listened, his face impassive. When she finished, he merely nodded. "We knew," he said. "Our stories, they speak of the great harvest swallowed by the sea. They speak of the nets that stretch to the horizon, and the homes built to watch them. Not of golden cities, but of full bellies and strong hands." Aris felt a prickle of shame, then a deeper, more profound sense of clarity. "Why didn't you tell us?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Kai's gaze was steady. "You were not ready to hear it. You sought a king's treasure. We had only our ancestors' wisdom. Who would believe an old man's stories of fish nets, when the world was looking for a palace? That's the core of it, isn't it? The indigenous knowledge, present for centuries, patiently waiting for the scientific method to catch up, to finally ask the right question. And when it did, it wasn't to find a secret, but to confirm a known truth, one that had been protected, not hidden. Kai's people had kept the truth, not because it was secret, but because it was sacred, and they knew the outside world wouldn't value it in the way they did. Aris made a decision then. She couldn't force the grand institutions to care about a fish farm. She couldn't make them understand the profound humanity of what she'd found. But she could honor it. She shifted her focus entirely. She published papers, meticulously detailing the Bronze Age aquaculture, the specific techniques, the evidence of its destruction. She became a quiet champion of underappreciated ancient technologies, of the ingenuity of early societies to sustain themselves. Her work was respected, awarded even, but it never garnered the headlines she once dreamed of. It was a Pyrrhic victory, Elena would say, winning the truth but losing the glory she'd unknowingly sought. Sometimes, late at night, I think about her. The way she started, full of vivid amber dreams of Atlantis, and the way she ended, quietly advocating for ancient fish farms. It makes me wonder about all the things we chase in our lives, all the grand, shining things, and what happens when we finally catch them, only to realize they are smaller, quieter, more profound than we ever imagined. And the burden of that knowledge. What do you do, then, with a truth that costs more than the lie it replaced? I'm not going to pretend this resolved cleanly. Aris never stopped her research, but she stopped talking about Atlantis. She focused on the real, on the Bronze Age communities, on the ingenious ways they lived and died. She still held the photographs, though. The vivid electric azure of the Mediterranean, the subtle, rhythmic marks on the seabed. She'd look at them and sometimes, Elena said, a faint, almost imperceptible smile would touch her lips. A smile that spoke of a quiet triumph, and an even quieter grief. The legend was real, after all. Just not for the reasons anyone had expected. What does it mean, to spend your life searching for a marvel, only to find humanity? To understand that the real wonder wasn't in some alien technology, but in the sheer, magnificent effort of people trying to feed themselves, to survive, to build a life. I wonder if Aris ever regretted trading the myth for the truth. Or if, somewhere deep down, she found a different kind of peace. A heavier, more resonant peace, perhaps. That old Venetian map, the one with the peculiar crosshatch pattern, the one that started everything for Aris Thorne, sits now in a glass display case at a small, regional museum. It's part of an exhibit on ancient maritime trade, not lost civilizations. The curator, a former student of Aris's, placed a small, beautifully rendered drawing beside it, a depiction of a Bronze Age coastal community, with vast, shimmering nets stretching into the clear blue sea, teeming with fish. Not a city of gods, but a testament to human ingenuity. A silent, enduring echo of a civilization built on the rhythms of the ocean. A truth, finally, seen. The real mistake here is thinking that the grander the story, the more profound the loss. Aris learned, the hard way, that a lost fish farm, a vanished way of life, could carry just as much weight, just as much sorrow, as any fabled golden city. Maybe even more, because it was so utterly, devastatingly human. Aris traded a grand myth for a profound human truth, but it came with quiet grief. If you were in her shoes, would you have chosen the weight of that truth over the glory of the legend? If stories that reveal the profound, sometimes bittersweet truths hidden within the grand narratives of history resonate with you, then you've found a home here. We journey together into the echoes of forgotten human ingenuity. Do you know someone who's chasing their own grand Atlantis, perhaps overlooking the profound human stories unfolding right before them? This is for anyone who needs to be reminded that the deepest wonders are often found not in myth, but in the enduring spirit of humanity. After a lifetime chasing Atlantis, Aris found a human truth. Would you have accepted that quiet peace, or forever regretted the lost myth? Tell me in the comments. If Aris's journey made you realize that the real wonder lies in the magnificent effort of humanity, not just grand myths, then hit the like button. If you're someone who loves to peel back the layers of ancient myths to discover the profound human truths beneath, then you've found your home here.